Good morning, students. Today, let us discuss about deadlocks. This is Arvind Egireddy from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. This video is brought to you by Newton's Group of Institutions, Macherla. So today, let us see what are the different topics what we are going to discuss. So here we will discuss about what is a deadlock problem, what is the deadlock modeling, deadlock characterization, about resource allocation graph, and the methods for handling the deadlocks, that is the deadlock prevention, deadlock avoidance, deadlock detection, and recovery from the deadlock. So as we all know that in the case of multi-programming systems, several processes may compete for a finite number of resources. And a process requests the resource. And if the resources are not available at that time, then the process enters a wait state. And it may happen that the waiting process will never again change the state because the resources they have requested are being held by the other waiting process. And this situation is called as an deadlock. So here, the formal definition for deadlock. A set of process is a deadlock if each process in the set is waiting for an event that only another process in the set can cause. So here, the deadlock, when the deadlock occurs, no process is going to run, or no process is going to release the resource, or no process will be awake. So here, let us see deadlock modeling. A system which consists of finite number of resources to be distributed among number of computing processes. And these resources are partitioned into several types, and each of which consists of some number of identical instances, like memory space, CPU cycles, files, and input devices such as printers and tape drivers. So these are all the examples of resource type. Suppose if the system is having two CPUs, then the resource type of CPU has two instances. Similarly, the resource type for printers may be 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the number of printers that are available. So, if a process requests an instance of the resource type, the allocation of any instance of that type will satisfy the request. If it will not, then the instances are not identical, or the resource type class has not been defined properly. For suppose a system which is having two printers, and these two printers we may be defined in the same resource class. So here no one cares which printer prints the output. So here a process must request the resource before using it and must release the resource after using it. Or a process may request as many resources as it requests to carry out its designated task. Obviously, the number of resources requested may not exceed the total number of resources that are available in the system. So here we can say, in other words, that a process cannot request 3 printers if the system is having only 2. So here under the normal mode of the operations, a process may utilize the resource in the following sequence, like what we have here. Request, after request we have to use it, and after using it we have to release. So if the request cannot be granted immediately, then the requesting process must wait until it can acquire that particular resource. So once after the requested resource is being allotted, then the process can operate on the resource, that is, can use it. Then once after finishing its job, the process is going to release the resource. So here, the request and release of the resource are system calls. So examples of the request and release devices are open a file, close a file, and allocate and free, which are memory system calls. So here, a set of process is in a deadlock state. Whenever the process in that particular set is waiting for an event that cannot be caused by only another process in that particular set. Now let us see the different deadlock characterizations. So let us see the deadlock necessary conditions. And here, the deadlock situation can arise if any of the four conditions that are going to hold simultaneously. And those four conditions are, first one is mutual exclusion. So here, what we mean by mutual exclusion is that at least one resource must be held in an non-shareable mode. At least one resource must be held in an non-shareable mode. That is, only one process at a time can use the resource. And if another process requests the resource, the requesting process must be delayed until the resource has been released. This is the first condition. The second condition is hold and wait. That is, there must exist a process that is holding at least one resource and is waiting to acquire additional resource that are being currently held by the other process. This is what is meant by hold and wait. So it must hold at least one resource and must wait for an other resource which is being held by the other resource. This is what is hold and wait. Third one is no preemption, which means that resource cannot be preempted. The meaning of preempted is that a resource can be released only voluntarily by the process holding it. That too after the process completes the task. So we cannot pull the resource with the force from any process. And the fourth one is circular wait. So circular wait means if there is a cycle in the wait for graph, then we call it as a circular wait. Suppose if there exists a set of process P0, P1, so on, Pn of waiting process, such as P0 is waiting for resource that is being held by P1 and P1 is waiting for a resource that is being held by P2, so on, and Pn minus 1 is waiting for the resource that is being held by Pn and Pn is waiting for the resource that is held by the P0. So here, such kind of situation is called as an circular wait. So here, for a deadlock situation to occur, we emphasize that all the four conditions must hold. So here the circular wait condition implies that the hold and wait condition. So the four conditions are not completely independent. That is what we have to notice. Now let us see what is a resource allocation graph. Here deadlocks can be described more precisely in terms of a directed graph called as a system resource allocation graph. So here the graph consists of set of vertices V and set of edges E. And these set of vertices is partitioned into two types. P is equal to P1, P2, so on up to Pn. The set consisting of all the active processes in the system. And R is equal to R1, R2, so on up to Rm. The set consisting of all the resource type in the system. So here I'm saying all the resource type. So R1, R2, Rm are not the resource. They are of resource type. They are instances of some resource with a similar type. So if a direct edge from the process Pi to resource type Rj is denoted by Pi to Rj, it signifies that the process Pi is has requested an instance of the resource type Rj and is currently waiting for the resource Rj. So here the direct edge from resource type Rj to process Pi is denoted like this, Rj to Pi, which signifies that the instance of the resource type Rj has been allocated to the process Pi. So here a direct edge Pi to Rj is called as a request edge and Rj to Pi is called as an assignment edge. So here practically we represent each process as a circle and each resource type Rj as a square. Since the resource type Rj may have more than one instances, we represent each such instance as a small square within that particular square. So here my resource instance is having 4 instances of type Rj. So here the requested edge points, see here, Pi requests the instance of Rj. So here there is an arrow from Pi to Rj. So here the process Pi requests an instance resource of type Rj. Similarly, if Rj is Pi is holding the instance of resource Rj, then we are going to represent like this. So from the arrow will be from resource to the process. So here the resource, let us see the resource allocation graph so that we can understand more clearly. Here, so we have 3 processes, P1, P2, P3, and we have 4 resources, R1, R2, R3, and R4. Here the edges are P1 to Ri. So here it is making the request, and P2 to R3, So P2 to R3, R1 to P2. So P2 is holding the resource R2. P2 is requesting the resource R3. P3 is holding the resource R3. And here P1 and P2 are holding the resource R1 and R2. So here the process P1, which is holding the instance of resource of type R2 and is waiting for the instance of R1 and is waiting for the instance of R1. And the process P2 is holding an instance of R1 and R2. So P2 is holding the instance of R1 and R2 and is waiting for the instance of the resource of type R3. And P3 is the resource which is holding the instance of R3 and is requesting for the resource R2. So here each resource type which is having several instances and the cycle may or may not necessarily apply. So here in this case, the cycle in the graph is necessary but not sufficient condition to the existence of the deadlock. So here the process P1, P2, P3 are deadlocked because process P2 is waiting for the resource R3, which is being held by the process P3, and process P3 on the other hand is waiting for the process P2 to release the resource R1. So this situation, what we call it as an deadlock situation. Okay, so if we see here, process P1, P2, P3, process P1, P2, P3. This is also a deadlock process because process P1 is waiting for resource R1, which is being held by the process P2 and process P3. And process P3 is waiting for the resource R2 and it is holding the resource R1 and is waiting for the resource that is being held by the process P1. So here P1, P2 and P3 are deadlock situations. Understood? So here we consider the resource allocation graphs where P1 to R1, R1 to P3, P3 to R2 and R2 to P1. And we have to notice that even though there is an circular loop here in this situation, there may or may not be a deadlock. Because if you observe that P4 may release the instance of the resource R2 because that resource can then be allocated to P3 by breaking the cycle. So we can say that if a resource allocation graph does not have a cycle, then the system is not in a deadlock state. On the other hand, we can say like this, if there is a cycle, then the system may or may not be in a deadlock state. So here, this observation is most important when we are going to deal with the deadlock problems. Now, let us see the different methods for handling the deadlock. So to ensure that the deadlock never occurs in the system, we can use either the deadlock prevention method or deadlock avoidance method. And if the system does not imply deadlock prevention or deadlock avoidance algorithms, then a deadlock in this situation may occur, so that the system must provide an algorithm for deadlock detection and recovery. So if none of the above methods, that is deadlock prevention or deadlock avoidance or deadlock detection or deadlock recovery, are provided to the system for handling the deadlock, then an undetected deadlock will result in the deterioration of the system's performance. So let us see what is deadlock prevention. So here the general meaning for preventing is to take the medicine before the attack of the disease. So here deadlock prevention is the same as the preventive methods taken before attacking the deadlock. So for a deadlock to occur, we have seen that each of the 4 necessary conditions must hold by ensuring that at least one of these conditions cannot be held, because they have to occur simultaneously. We have seen mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, circular wait. So all this, out of all these, we have to see that at least one does not happen. So we have to apply the techniques on these 4 necessary conditions separately. So we have to see that there is no mutual exclusion. As we know that mutual exclusion means only one process can use the resource at a time. That means that the resources are not shared by number of processes at a time. So the resources are in non-shareable mode only. So we can delay this condition with a simple protocol, that is converting all the non-shareable resource to shareable resource. And this condition is not satisfied by the deadlock, so we can prevent the deadlock. Of course, here there is a small correction, a printer which is not shared by the number of processes at a time. So we cannot convert the printer from non-shareable to shareable mode, or we cannot apply this prevention method for the systems which is consisting of printers. Next, hold and wait. As we know that hold and wait means each and every process in the deadlock state must hold at least one resource and need to be waiting for at least one resource. So here we can deny this particular condition by using small protocols. So let us see what is the first protocol what we can use. That is, a process requests the resource only when the process has no other resource. So a process can request the resource when the process has no other resource. And this protocol is very expensive and it is time consuming. For suppose if we take an example, a process wants to copy the data from a tape drive to a disk file, and then it wants to take a printout. So here initially the process consists of tape drive and disk file. Now the process is requesting for the printer. So by applying the above protocol, what the process has to do, the process should release the tape drive and a disk file before it is requesting for the printer. And this entire particular process, it is a time consuming. So now let us see what is the second protocol what we can apply. That is, each process to request and be allocated all its resource being before it begins the execution. So we have to allocate all the resource before starting itself. So it has to request for what all the resources that are being required before starting the execution, before beginning the execution. Of course, this is also very difficult to implement because more the number of resources are available to begin the execution. For example, if we have 100 processes, each requires a printer to complete their job. And by applying this particular protocol to the system, must consider all the 100 printers. So it is very difficult to implement. And there are two main disadvantages of these protocols. First one is resource unutilization is very poor. Second, starvation is possible. So the process that needs several popular resources may have to wait indefinitely because at least one of the resources that it needs is always being allocated to some other process. Now let us see the third, that is no preemption. The third necessary condition is no preemption, which means that the resources are not released in the middle of the processing of a resource. To ensure that this condition does not hold, we have to use the following protocols. That is, a process which requests some resource, we first check whether they are available. If they are available, we allocate them. And if they are not available, we check whether they are allocated to some other process that is waiting for the additional resource. If so, what we do is we preempt the desired resource from the waiting process and allocate them to the request process. So if the resources are not either available or being held by another waiting process, then the request process has to wait. So while it is waiting, some of its resource may be used by the other process. So this is how we can eliminate the no preemption. Now, the fourth, that is a circular wait. So to ensure that the circular wait must not happen, we apply a simple solution. What we do is we number all the resource type, and each process that requests the resource is an increasing order of enumeration. So here, alternatively, whenever a process requests an instance of the resource of type Rj, it has released any resource Ri such that f of Ri should be greater than f of Rj. And the second protocol is that a process can initially request any number of instances of the resource of that particular type. Say here Ri. After that, the process can request the instance of the resource type Rj if and only if f of Ri is greater than f of Rj. So if these two protocols are being used, then the circular wait condition cannot hold. Now let us see the deadlock avoidance. So it requires that an operating system to begin in advance some additional information regarding which resource a process will request and use it during its lifetime. So with this additional knowledge, we can decide for each request whether or not the process should wait. So here each request requires the system should consider the resources that are currently available, the resources that are currently allocated to each process, and further the request and the release of each process to decide whether the current request can be satisfied or must be delayed. So this is the simplest and most useful model that requires that each process declare the maximum number of resource of each type that it may need. So here in this particular case, the deadlock avoidance algorithm, they dynamically examine the resource allocation state to ensure that there can never be a circular wait condition. And these resource allocation states are being defined by number of available and allocated resource and the maximum demand of that particular process. So here we have to know what is a safe state. We say that a particular state is safe if the system can allocate resources to each process in some order to avoid the deadlock. So a system is in a safe state only if there exists a safe sequence. For suppose the sequence of process P1 to Pn is a safe sequence, if each process of Pi, the resource that the Pi can still request can be satisfied by currently available resource plus the resource that are being held by the Pi, where j less than I. So a safe state is not a deadlock state. Conversely, a deadlock state is not unsafe state. Not all unsafe states are deadlocks. That is, if a system is in a safe state, that implies there no deadlock occurs. If the system is in unsafe state, there is a possibility of deadlock. And we can avoid these deadlocks by ensuring that the system will never enter into an unsafe state. Okay, so now let us see the Banker's algorithm. What that particular Banker's algorithm we are going to use for avoiding the deadlock. So here in the Banker's algorithm, the resource allocation graph algorithm is not applicable to a resource allocation system with multiple instances of each resource type. So here the deadlock avoidance algorithm that we are going to see is applicable to only such a type of systems. But of course, it is less efficient than the resource allocation graph schema. So here in this algorithm, it commonly known as the Banker's algorithm. Here the name was chosen because this algorithm could be used in the banking system to ensure that the bank never allocates the cash such that it can no longer satisfy the needs of all the customers. So here, when a new process enters the system, it must declare the maximum number of instances for each resource type that it may need. And this number may not exceed the total number of resources in the system. And when the users, they request a set of resources, the system must determine whether the allocation of these resources will level the system in a safe state or not. If it will, then the resources are allocated. Otherwise, the process must wait until some other process releases enough resources. So here, several data structures must be maintained to implement the Banker's algorithm. And these data structures, they encode the state of the resource allocation system. Suppose if let n be the number of processes in the system and m be the number of resource type we need to allocate to the data structure, then we have to see whether they are available or not. So available means a vector of length m which indicates the number of available resources of each type. So if available of j is equal to k, that means that there are k instances of resource type rj which are available. Then max, if n cross m matrix defines the maximum demand for each process if max ij is equal to k. Then the process Pi may request at most k instances of the resource type Rj. Now coming to allocation, in an n by m matrix which defines the number of resources of each type that are currently allocated to each process. That is, if allocation ij is equal to k, then the process Pi is currently allocated to k instances of the resource type Rj. The last one, need. So in an n by m matrix which indicates the remaining resource that need for each process, if need of ij is equal to k, that means that the process Pi may need k more instances of the type resource type Rj so that it can complete the task. So here we have to note that need of ij is equal to max ij minus allocated ij. So these data structures vary over time in both size and value. So to simplify the presentation of the banker's algorithm, we have to establish some notations. Suppose if x and y be vectors of length n, then we say that x is less than y if and only if x of I less than or equal to y of I for all I 1 to n. Okay, so we can treat each row in the matrix allocation and needs as vectors, and we have to refer to them as allocation of I, need of I, respectively. So here the vector allocation I specifies the resource currently allocated to process Pi. The vector need I specifies the additional resource that the process Pi may still request to complete its task. Now, let us see what is the deadlock detection. So to prevent from the deadlock situation, the system has to employ either a deadlock prevention or deadlock avoidance algorithm. So an algorithm that examines the state of the system to determine whether a deadlock has occurred and then deadlock to recover from the deadlock. So here we use the single instances of each resource type. So we can define a deadlock detection algorithm that uses a variant of resource allocation graphs, which called wait for a graph, when all the resource has only a single instance. Or we can use several instances of resource type. So we have to wait for a graph whether it is not applicable to the resource allocation system with multiple instances of each resource type. So here the data instructions employed in the algorithm are, as we have seen, allocation, available, allocation, and request. So here the detection algorithm, they describe simply the investigate, it is going to investigate whether every possible allocation sequence for the process that remains to be completed or not. Okay. So here, to apply this particular schema, we have to use either recovery from deadlock. That is, we have to apply the recovery schemas. That is, if there are two methods for breaking a deadlock, we have to see whether one solution is simply to about 1 by 1 process to break the circular wait, and the second option is to preempt some resource from one or more deadlock processes. So by using such systems, we can overcome the deadlock state. So that's all for now. I hope you understood. Please do subscribe to my channel if you like this video for more updates. Thank you one and all. Thank you.